Today we're going to make this really simple painting of a tree with a beautiful background. You'll need water, of course, a basic set of paintbrushes, an easel, and a little bit of tape to tape the edges like this. And don't forget, you can add some acrylic markers to it. The brushes are pretty much big to medium and small, as well as a rag. Have your canvas all taped up and go ahead and do your underdrawing. You can see here I'm just focusing on getting a very rough organic underdrawing. You don't need to get super detailed yet. This is mostly just to give you boundaries in which to put some of the background, the tree in front, and to add your layering when you do paint the background. Some of the colors I'm using are a simple black, purple, green, medium blue, and just going to start with the cold colors first. Don't be afraid to get sloppy. Mix everything together, and don't worry too much about getting detail. I always see people try to paint by detail, having like a detailed layered background for the sky. Don't worry about that. Get yourself a bunch of blue for the water at the bottom. Get yourself a bunch of black and dark purples for the background. And then just kind of lightly paint in some of the shadows for the mountains in the background. If you start to go over your underdrawing and accidentally cover the tree that you put, don't worry about it. We're doing everything in layers. We're building it in layers. It's kind of the same way that you would shape clay. Don't focus so much on getting your shapes perfect. Just worry about getting your layers in there. It's easier to start with lighter layers first. Hence, you go with a really watery background like you saw me do with the biggest paintbrush. And then you can kind of fill in the little bit of detail that is in these very organic shapes for the rocks and the mountains. But again, there's no wrong way to do this. The organic shapes, nature does not have perfect triangles, squares, or circles. So just go freehand. Don't worry so much about it. Same with the tree. Don't worry so much about getting your tree perfect. Now, as you can see, I'm painting the tree a little bit in the foreground, but you're going to find out that later we're still going to layer over top of this and then come back in and do the detail of the tree a second time. So again, if you mess this up, don't worry. When it comes to painting and learning layering with acrylics, it's all about experimenting and see what works best for you. You're going to even see here when I paint in these orange mountains in the background, I touch the tree, I go over the tree. It's so there isn't an actual gap in between how the mountains flow in the background. And if I cover that layer of brown where the tree is, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go over the tree again. As you can see, I'm darkening in the background again. That goes right over top of the branches that I just painted. It'll even probably scrape some of the paint off of them. That's okay. Now look, as I start to separate these layers and put in the white for the sort of mist that's coming off the water, I use my thumb to smudge it up a bit. The great thing about acrylics is they've got a little bit of time before they dry, and because they are a kind of plastic, more or less, you can smear them, you can smudge them before they finally take hold. Don't be afraid to do that. A lot of, I'd say, more traditional artists kind of shy away from things like smudging and moving your paints around with your hands or keeping them very loose. Don't worry about that. We're going for the easy way to get this art done, and that's all you need to focus on. Now look, you can see my branches and especially the trunk of my tree is absolutely covered by the white that I just used to put on the top of the water layer. And I'm also adding that white to the top of my mountains. And look, the yellow that I'm adding to the background, that's going right through my tree as well. Don't worry about messing up with painting over top of stuff. It kind of touches the top of my mountains. It starts to make my tree look dull and sort of misty behind that layer of yellow. We're going to do another layer. That's the beautiful thing about working with acrylics. Now, As you see me use the medium-sized brush here, I'm tapping the top of the brush and just letting the bristles be pushed apart to make that very dense foliage that is covering the top branches of the tree. There's no point in trying to paint perfect little leaves. You're looking at this from very far away. You don't need that kind of detail. Smash the tip of your brush down and let the bristles kind of push apart and give you this very organic leafy look that you'll go in later and detail even more. As you can see, I'm going back in, I'm touching up all of those branches, I'm touching up all the wood on the tree, and I'm filling in any of those spots that got kind of covered by the yellow in the background. I'm also adding a little more shading to the orange mountains, which you'll find out later. I'm going to go back in and cover in another layer of orange so that they really pop out. The main reason I want them to pop out is it'll create a great contrast between the very dark black mountains and the very dark blue hues of the water. That's the best part about using a beautiful sky that's kind of going from very light yellows to a dark purple and orange. There's going to be a great amount of contrast in there, and it'll really make everything pop out, especially everything in the foreground. You can see I'm starting to darken in a little bit and add a bit more hue to the blue of the water. And I'm going to go even darker than what you see there, adding another layer on top of the leaves that are already painted. And again, these are going to get painted over as well. Now, here's where I was talking about adding in the next layer of orange on top of the mountains. This is really going to make them pop out behind the very dark, cold blue hues of the black mountain ridges and the blue water with the mist rising off the top. And again, covering up with a second layer of green on top of that tree, just like I said I would do. Never worry about things getting lost in the sort of layers you put on top. You can always cover them up again and go back over them again, and they'll start to pop back out to the surface. Now, of course, there are certain things that would take many, many layers. For example, if I were to go yellow and then cover it up with black and try to cover it up yellow again, that would be much harder. But when you work with these darker colors like brown and black hues, it's very easy to do. So again, when you have this sort of white mist rising up off the water, don't worry if it covers the trunk of the tree, the branches of the tree, etc. Don't worry about the yellow in the background. That's part of the sky. You can easily paint that detail back over again on top of the tree. Just enjoy working with the layering. And later you'll even see too how easy it is to add in some details. And I guess kind of see a way that you can cheat. That's one thing I'm going to teach you how to do, is kind of cheat the picture by not worrying so much about getting these perfect brush strokes or painting in tiny little bits of detail with a very fine brush head. We're going to go back in with the acrylic markers, and it's going to show you how we can get a bunch of detail in here and really make the tree pop out of the background, as well as the grass that's growing beneath it, and even add more contrast to those orange mountains in the background. That's what I'm here to do. I'm just here to teach you how to do the easiest and hopefully the cheapest way to make a decent looking painting that is all done in acrylic. Some people have asked about using Posca before to use them in the same way you would the acrylic markers. You can do that, but do realize mixing the Posca markers with the acrylic paint is eventually going to lead to peeling and chipping later in the painting's life as these paintings age. If the different mediums have been mixed, for example, if you tried to use oil paints and acrylic paints, it would lead to peeling and chipping. Same thing would happen if you used Posca and acrylic. It's just the combination doesn't gel over time. It starts to flake and peel off. So I'm also, going for value, going for the cheapest method possible and the easiest way possible, but also hoping I'm giving you a painting that will last a decent time. Of course, over time, acrylic is going to age no matter what, but the beautiful thing about it is that it really pops when it comes to color. It's very bright, very saturated with color, and it doesn't get that same sort of, I guess, greasy layered graininess that oil paints do over time. Although I will say with oil paints, you can get in a lot finer detail and you can rework mistakes endlessly, whereas acrylic will not let you do that. There are a certain level to the amount of mistakes you can make. Now, if you take a look, I'm adding shadows to the different leaves of the tree, and I'm doing that by simply lightly tapping with a black, add it to the brush tip that is the same medium brush tip, and just adding it to the bottom, of course, because we know we've got our light coming from the top. I'm also adding black to the top of our mountain ridges, and then slowly fading it downwards towards the mist, because we know we've got that mist rising up off the water. And that's going to let it be even more of a contrast with the white mist of the water and the black ridges of the mountains. I'm also eventually going to add the light on top of the leaves that are on this tree here in the middle, and that's going to make the same sort of contrast happen with the black sort of shadows you see at the bottom of the foliage on the branches and the tree leaves. I'm adding in a lot of contrast by first making the tops pop out with the light hitting them. And again, this is the same technique. Just lightly tap a bit of that color on the edge of your medium-sized brush, and then just push all the tops down on those brushes to give you that sort of spaced out, chunky sort of delivery. Don't put too much on the tip of the brush, because the one thing, like I said, acrylic is a plastic. It will start to leave like ridges and bumps if it gets too thick. Be careful with how heavily you are applying the paint, because if you do make a mistake, you'll be okay with covering it up and painting back over, but you'll start to see bumps and ridges form, which, although you may not notice it in different lighting, when there is a really bright light hitting it, if you put it in, for example, a gallery, those bumps would start to show up. Now here I'm taking the acrylic marker and very lightly tapping on it to give you those stars in the sky. I'm matching up the different colors of the tree and the grass at the bottom, going much lighter with the grass that is in front of the tree, because this is one of the closest things to the point of view of the viewer looking at the picture. And later you'll also see I add just a couple of strands of grass in front of the rocks as well. I add a light sort of tapping of it where I only get the shape of the actual marker to touch the tips of these leaves here and give it that highlight. And you're gonna see later I even go back in and add the same color green that is in the grass on this tree. And you're gonna see that gives it the final pop that lets it really be highlighted against this night sky, this gradually gradiently applied night sky. And I feel like that gives it a lot more depth, and that's where you're going to kind of start to get your tree to become far more 3D and pop to the surface, rather than this very 2D, very layered plain background. I'm going back in with a black acrylic marker, and I'm adding extra branches. Those can be pretty much solid black. You don't have to worry too much about mixing the brown and the black, because they would have little to no color definition, since they're just barely being lit up by the backlighting of the gradually darkening sky in the background. So don't worry too much about that. I'm using a smudging technique as well, because if you try to just keep it as bright white as that actual marker is, it's gonna be way too dark. I would try to keep it smudged, just due to the fact that it will blend in a lot better and give you more depth and more of a feel of branches having that sort of ridged and grainy look, so that it really appears far different than the background that is very 2D. As a final touch, I'm adding in some smudging from my white acrylic marker and making that sky just pop out even a little bit more. It gives it sort of this hazy dissonance as it gradually taps up to the top as well as the water. It is pretty apparent that that's water, but I feel like the extra white ridges being smudged into it give it that depth even more. Finally, I peel off the Scotch tape that I had around the edges. This gives you a nice little white border, so when you try to sell the painting, or if you decide to frame it yourself, you know exactly where the frame goes. It gives a little edge to your painting that won't let it be cut off when it is put into a frame. I hope that helps you figure out the best way to make a very simple background with a little bit of a foreground landscape, and try out your very first acrylic painting. Of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. I am more than happy to help you gain your skills when creating your very first acrylic masterpiece. I've been Scott Ackerman, and this is Art Made Easy.